Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 739A, and today's date is August 11th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Evidence is Clear, the Collapse is Upon Us. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Let's head out right to Greece. Now, we understand that Greece and the creditors, they're in talks right now, and they're discussing the bailout deal. And right now, we understand that this is not going to help Greece whatsoever. Yes, it will kick the can down the street, but we understand it is not going to help. And right now, they kind of agreed on this third austerity deal. And again, it is an austerity deal. It's putting Greece further into debt. It's kicking the can down the road. And this is involving loans of up to about 86 billion euros. And they're saying, well, yeah, we made the agreement, but there's still some things we need to work out, and there might be 2 or 3 small little details, and we'll let you know. We have to remember, Greece needs to make a 3.2 billion euro payment come August 20th, and they owe 1.5 billion to the IMF in September. So the country needs about 86 billion euros to avoid a complete collapse, and the country right now is collapsing. It has collapsed. And all they're doing is giving them debt. Where do you think the revenue is going to come from to pay for this additional debt? They won't be able to find it. It will not happen. So they will continually be in this collapse scenario. The IMF knows it. The central bankers know it. And they realize that all of this, it just can't work. The whole thing is just collapsing and falling apart right in front of our eyes. I mean, look at Japan right now. Their debt has reached all-time record high. 1.057 quadrillion yen. That's quadrillion. How are they going to pay this debt back? It is impossible. They cannot do it. And this is not just happening in 1 or 2 countries. This is happening in many countries. And the indicators that we are seeing is just getting worse and worse as time goes on. I mean, here in the United States, we understand the economy here is made up of consumerism. People going out spending their money. They have a job, they make the money, they go out and they spend the money. Manufacturing, producing, we're really not seeing that right now. And what we're seeing right now is that this so-called recovery is really starting to fall apart. I mean, things are coming out now, and we're seeing red flashing warning signs all over the place. And this is coming from the New York Fed, Survey of Consumer Expectations. We've learned that the U.S. consumer has finally tapped out. Households reported that they expected to increase their spending by just 3.5% in the next year, a major drop from 4.3% the month before. This was the lowest reading in history. Worse, when adjusting the household inflation expectations, which had been relatively flat, if modestly declining around 3%. Real spending intentions, when adjusted for inflation, just crashed to barely a positive 0.5%, down over 60% from the prior month. Again, we are seeing this system completely fall apart. The biggest culprit in the collapse in spending was not the poor. It was the middle class. Those people are making between $50,000 and $100,000. But we've seen a huge collapse in spending from the wealthy, those people who are making $100,000 or more. And these people realize something is wrong. They're nervous, they're worried, they're seeing their colleagues get laid off. And right now, people are saying, you know something, maybe this is not a good time to spend. And we understand consumer spending makes up 70% of the GDP. So if they're not spending, this entire system is going to collapse, because this will then affect auto sales. It will affect housing sales. It will affect retail sales. And guess what? We have a major collapse on hand. And this is what is happening at this point. It is not going to get better anytime soon. I understand we're in the summer. We're going to be heading into the fall, to the holiday season, and this is going to be a complete disaster. And we're seeing right now that the wage growth imploded on itself. And right now, people are making less and less money. I mean, the second quarter was a 0.5% increase, the weakest since the third quarter of 2014. Wage growth in America is not robust. The momentum is lost. It is completely falling apart. And if people aren't making more money and wages continually drop, this reflects in their spending. So it's all starting to fit together, and it makes sense. But we're seeing something, and basically it's telling us that we're seeing a recession/depression, or for those people who believe we've been in a recession/depression all this time, we're approaching a collapse. And if we look at the ratio of wholesale inventories to sales, which we are seeing right now, it is at the highest since the recession, and right now it is flashing an enormous red flag for an imminent recession in America. Because inventory to sales has been pushed back up to 1.3. And the auto industry is continually channel stuffing the dealerships. They have a bigger than expected 0.9% surge in inventories. So what are we seeing here? Nobody is buying. Inventories are rising. And right now, if we go back in time, let's say we go back to 2001, we are approaching the 1.35, and that signaled a recession in 2001. In 2008, when we hit 1.4, it signaled a recession. We're at 1.3 right now. So we are seeing the same thing occur. And we understand that this entire system is based on a central bank economy. It's not a people's economy. And people continually ask me, why do you keep talking about housing? Why is it important? Well, housing is a very important component of any economy, and often an indicator of the well-being of a society. In the U.S., housing has been deteriorating since the subprime crisis. Yes, they've been telling us we're in a recovery, but we've never, ever reached the same point that we were. It was pushed up to a certain point, and now it's declining. The housing market is decaying. It's not in a recovery. We're seeing prices starting to fall. And we have to remember that housing works when people are making more money, so they can afford the higher priced houses. But right now what we're seeing is wages are dropping, people aren't spending, and prices were continually going up. They're finally stalling because the central bank, who's been pushing the prices up, can't do it anymore. And the American people are saying, we can't afford these high prices. So what they've done is they've suppressed interest rates. They increased the prices by keeping all the foreclosures off the market to drive the prices up. They had hedge fund investment companies investing in these housing units, not one or two, but thousands of them. They were told to hold on to them, rent them if you can, to drive the prices up, hoping that the people would run out there and buy all these homes. It didn't work because they didn't understand. The people are tapped out. The people have nothing left. And they realized this back in 2013 when the mortgage companies started to lay off thousands upon thousands of people. But we're seeing something else now. Rail traffic fell in July from a year ago. An increase in container volumes couldn't offset a steep decline in oil and coal shipments, according to the Association of American Railroads. Traffic data indicates growth is slow and the recovery could be threatened by an interest rate increase by the Fed. And we've seen this kind of slide before. The number of carloads carrying oil and petroleum products dropped by 13.6% from a year ago. Oil train shipments have tumbled this year, hurt by plunging prices for crude and concerns about the safety of transporting petroleum by rail. And we've seen this before in previous years, back in 2008. And we're seeing the same thing occur now. So we're seeing all these indicators, and they're all flashing the red signal saying, yes, we're headed towards a collapse. Now, what's very interesting about this, and it seems that many people who are listening to the alternative or new media, realize what's going on, they're accepting of it, and they're saying, yes, I see this. Those people who are listening to the corporate media still have their jobs, not really paying attention. Usually we say those people are asleep. But those people are starting to realize something's up. I mean, we've seen many Gallup polls reporting on this. And right now we see Americans who see economic deterioration are now outnumbering those people who believe the economy is getting better. So people are starting to wake up, and they're seeing that the economy is definitely getting worse. And this happens when people say, okay, I have this great job. They're telling me that unemployment is continually dropping. It's in the 5% range, and I should be able to put my resume out there and get a job lickety-split. They put their resume out there, and there's nothing. So then they start thinking, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. And if I do get a response, why don't they want to pay me any more? Why am I getting the same or less? This makes no sense. Because normally when you switch a job, you would like to make a couple thousand more than you were making before. If you're going to make less, why switch? It makes no sense. And people are starting to realize that, yeah, something is going on here. And what we're seeing is Americans said the economy is getting better, while 50% say it's still getting worse. So this shows us that people are starting to realize there's something wrong with the economy. And I know Obama, going back in time, said, hey, believe me, the economy is getting better. You don't have to feel it. Just believe what I'm saying. Well, I'm sorry. If you really believe the economy is getting better, you would feel it because you'd feel comfortable. You would feel secure in your job. You'd feel secure enough to go out and spend the money, but people do not feel this way. And what's very interesting about everything that's been going on, and we've been talking about this for quite a while, how the dollar is basically at its end game. And of course, people say, no, that's ridiculous. The dollar is strong. It's fantastic. And John Kerry came out and said something very interesting today. And this had to do with the Iran deal. And he said, the dollar will cease to be reserve currency of the world if the Iran deal is rejected. Now, I've been talking about this for quite a while. How they have to continually prop up the dollar in the Middle East through Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, Iraq, go into new countries like Iran, Syria. Now, everyone believed that this deal was about nuclear weapons. But really, what is it really about? Because this is a very odd statement that John Kerry came out and said. Because if it's just about nuclear weapons and everything is fine and the economy is strong, why would this be a problem? It's a problem because the United States understands, the United States government central bankers, maybe not the people so much, except those who are listening to me and others, They realize that the dollar is collapsing and they need to spread the debt to more and more countries. They need to put the petrodollar on oil supplies to keep this system propped up. This was the whole point of the Iran deal. To infiltrate their central bank, to make the deal to put the dollar on their natural resources, to keep the system alive. Now, if this deal doesn't go through, yes, it would have an effect, because you have to remember, they need to continually push this out. They need to capture the countries and place the dollar on their natural resources. As these other countries fall apart, Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, they're running into a problem. And this is why we see things starting to really ramp up and fall apart. And what they're worried about is that if these countries are taken over by the people, they will no longer use the dollar. And if they no longer use the dollar for other countries to pay for the natural resources, they don't need the dollar in reserve. So other countries are going to say, you know something, why are we keeping these dollars in reserves? We don't need them. We'll send them back to the United States. If they send the dollars back to the United States, what happens here? We have an influx of dollars, which means that the value of the dollar decreases, which means we see inflation. This is what is happening right now. And we understand that China is trying to get the yuan as a reserve currency, included in the SDR basket with the IMF. And we also understand things have been happening in China, things have been happening in the United States, in Europe, because one way or another, we are all connected. But again, the country that has the gold will turn out to be the winner. The country holding just paper and ink will be the loser, because if they have no gold, they're done. And this is why China and Russia have been continuously, non-stop purchasing gold. So China came out today and said they're going to devalue the yuan by 1.9%. And this sent the yuan back to the weakest since April of 2013. And basically what's going to happen now is the currency wars are going to start once again. And we can see that other countries are going to have to lower their currencies. And they're doing this to revive exports. But we see Russia, India, Thailand, they're going to prepare for this currency war. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying the yuan devaluation will have no significant impact on the Russian market. They're saying that the Chinese authorities and the Russian market, basically, they trade in yuans. And it's about 7%. And we compete with China in almost none of the product groups. Roughly speaking, our trade with China is our raw materials in exchange for Chinese cars and other finished products. And the yuan right now is really hurting because it's pegged to the dollar. And eventually, China would like to depeg from the dollar. This is their whole goal. And at this point in time, we can see the currency wars have begun. And this will ramp up as time goes on. And the United States government is basically the epicenter of this entire private Western central bank collapse. And it's going to be like a lake of water. When you throw a stone in, the ripples are going to basically go outward from that rock and hit other countries. And I know people think it's not really happening in the United States because the U.S. government central bankers are telling us that we're in the recovery. Our statistics look fantastic. Well, statistics can be manipulated. And we're starting to see that Europe is falling apart. And it might seem like Europe is going to fall apart first and then hit the United States, but really it's coming from the United States. It's all the policies of the United States that's causing all of this to occur. And it will come right back to the United States. and this whole thing will come crumbling down. And this is why continuously, over and over, everyone needs to be prepared. I mean, the people in Greece, they knew what was coming. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw what happened to Cyprus. They knew eventually the banks would be shut down. And they were. They were shut down. Capital controls were in effect. But most of the people got their money out. Most of the people invested in gold and silver. Most of the people basically prepped and had food. Not everybody. Of course, it's not going to be everybody. But here in the United States, everyone should be doing that. If you're listening to me, continually prep with food, water, supplies, gold, silver. Keep cash on hand. Of course, don't tell anyone where it is. Get extra medicine, toiletries, things you're going to need if everything shuts down. If you can't do this and you haven't been doing it, you can go to lifereliance.com. They put everything together all in one basket. Food, bug out bags, you name it, they will put it together for you and it'll be prepared to go. And if you don't feel that you can do this on your own, it is a great place to go. And you can do this at lifereliance.com. If not, you can go to Costco, you can go to BJ's, you can go to Sam's Club, or even the supermarket. Buy canned foods. Buy the supplies you need. But make sure you have something. Because we know when this hits, you want to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.